Hi, everybody. Welcome to PPUK podcast. With us today, we've got Paddy.
Hello.
And myself, Chopin. And today we have a very special guest. We have academic artist Hardeep Sahota.
Hi, everyone. You all right?
All good, all good. Very much welcome to the show. The first thing I say is you've been behind a new show, Prince Reimagined. Take us through that. How were you reimagining Prince?
So I've been an avid Prince fan for many, many years. I think since being a teenager, and not many people kind of know about that side of me. A lot of people know me about my work and my creative work in the field of Bhangra dancing, which is a Punjabi Indian dance. And this is something that I really kind of wanted to share with the world, and try and do it slightly different than it's ever been done before. So, as an artist, as a creative practitioner, I wanted to try and bring something together which wasn't just like a tribute band, which is fantastic and amazing. But I just wanted to kind of have a much more of a creative slant on this. So this is kind of my approach to this project.
I may add at this point as well, I was delighted to go and see the preview show for the Reimagined show that is actually happening on August the 6th at the Lawrence Batley Theatre in Huddersfield, which I have my tickets for. But I went to a preview show and saw 3 songs that had already been prepped for the show, and it's very, very interesting. From, I think, every sort of Prince enthusiast fan's point of view, we'll have a subjective idea of what we listen to, particularly when it's based on something so close to our hearts. But for me, I can honestly say this is a very, very interesting approach. And I again, not saying it for the sake of it, obviously I wouldn't be doing the interview if there was any issues, as it were, which I wouldn't have any right to have anyway. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it, loved the take on it, and loved how it was done. I guess as we go along, we'll get a little bit closer to the presentation and the music and what have you. But you mentioned there, one of the things that interested me, that you said that not a lot of people would have necessarily known you were a Prince fan, which is quite interesting. Do you want to expand on that and perhaps give us an idea of your way into Prince, if you can remember like where you were when you heard him for the first time and how that journey developed?
Yeah. So when I was growing up, my uncle, Manjit, everyone called him Prince. Like he literally, like he permed his hair. He looked very much like Prince, and he really kind of, played on it. You'd see him, in and around town and stuff, and yeah, people just shouting out Prince, Prince, and and obviously back in the 80s, Prince was on this massive surge of popularity and stuff, and he was the cool guy basically. And then, so me looking up towards my uncle, I had those kind of, similar kind of feelings, but I didn't know his music too well. And obviously, again, you see his, music videos, pop up like Love Sexy and Sign of the Times. And, so I obviously knew of the music. But I think when I actually turned into a complete fan is when I heard Get Off. And it was just, it blew my mind. And you know what? And then kind of hearing about the story behind it and, the record pressings being kind of, just showing up, outside, these venues and stuff and these clubs. And yeah, it's just something completely different that I never heard before. And I think at that time, obviously, as a young adult and stuff, teenager and stuff, you kind of connect to, to the music. And then I had a Sega Game Gear, right? And I actually saw that so my first Prince album was actually the Greatest Hits. So that was like a deep dive into his music, and I didn't even have a CD player at that point. And I just looking at the CD, and I had like a cassette, what I managed to get, I think from Woolworths or something. It was just that kind of, I wanted that music to be so clear, when I actually listened to it, and I was ready for the CD. And I actually studied at Bretton Hall, and at that time, we used to be able to loan out CDs from the libraries and actually have a CD player. So yeah, once I got those headphones on, there was just like, they weren't coming off again. Everywhere I went, I was listening to Prince constantly. And again, it's just, it's like Alice in Wonderland, isn't it? So you fall down that rabbit hole, and it's just such an amazing feeling to uncover so much of his legacy, so much of his music. And then, then you end up in record stores, finding all these B-sides and these all kind of these bootlegs. So it's been an amazing journey. But that music was always for me in the sense that I didn't have many people to share it with, to actually talk to, because everybody else, either Michael Jackson fans or more kind of mainstream artists, in the fact that who didn't really push those creative boundaries. And then again, being from a Sikh background, I think, the whole kind of sexuality and stuff was really kind of it was a very kind of straight and narrow path for the majority of my fellow, cousins and friends and stuff. And interestingly, I got married quite early on. I actually got married when I was 18. So that journey was, so my wife, she lived locally herself. We grew up together in a school, in and went to the local school together. And yes, that journey of his music exploration, became part of our relationship as well. The first concert we ever went to was at Sheffield Arena. We went to go see the Gold Experience, and it's just like,
I'm so jealous.
You have to understand you've made Chopin's day, because there's this little background thing on the podcast. Me and a guy called Andy are like the 80s guys. I mean, we love everything, but we're sort of a bit 80s leaning. Chopin and Lee are the hardcore 90s guys. And Lee,
90s. Yeah,
because I got into it around the same time, and get off. I didn't get to see him until later on, and I wish I'd gone to see that Gold tour. I'm jealous as hell of that one. But that hits. I had the same thing with that hits. Like, you get in, I like Thunder and Get Off were my kind of like roots in, and then you find out that there's this big 3-disc set of everything that you have to kind of deep dive and relearn, and all of these albums that I was getting from the library as well. So like these cassettes from the library, it was just, it sounds like it's really weird. It's one of these journeys that I think a lot of fans took on their own, but it's weird to think that there were so many of us at the same time doing exactly the same thing in our own little bedrooms, and there was this kind of like connecting threads to it.
Yeah. I mean, just randomly, traveling down to see Prince's store in London, in Camden. And it's just, those little quirky things, and like, people around you say, "Are you out of your mind? What are you doing?" And it's just so amazing. But again, I really didn't have anyone to talk to other than my wife. She knew I was a massive fan. She loves Prince as well. And, we were on that kind of journey together, exploring music. And, as newlyweds, your relationships are almost kind of reflected in some of the music and stuff. And, I think that's the beauty of Prince's music. It's not just, rose petals and sunshine. It's, it's kind of hardcore, gritty reality of learning how to manage relationships, the ups, the downs, and everything in between. So that was quite important to me.
I love the sound of that journey. I love the feeling of there's sort of something quite romantic about feeling that you've got this thing. You've sort of looked through this keyhole of this exciting miasma of musical possibility, but not that you can't share it with anybody, but you're sort of on your own for a while with this thing, just absorbing. I think it's a sort of a wonderful thing, is that. I was a little bit the same at the time, because all my friends were into very, very heavy metal. And there was me with Prince written on all my jacket and everything. It was very strange. But so for you then, having been a Prince fan as long as you have, and the other things that you do, when did you first sort of have a spark of an idea that you'd want to sort of do something with his music, bring it to the masses, and add something of your own, and invite other people in to add things of their own to it? When was that sort of spark?
Yeah, I mean, like I says, creatively, I've always kind of used, Prince's songbook as a bit of a springboard. So even when I was doing my degree, I was using his music and bringing it into like fine art ceramics and stuff, and building little ceramic speakers with his music coming through, and just random stuff like that. So I'm a very kind of, as a creative practitioner, it's kind of very, using music, song, dance, visual arts, and kind of bringing them together in different ways. And and much of my journey, as I was explaining before, has been to do with my kind of Bhangra performance. And it was actually the launch of Kirklees Year of Music, and I was invited to dance as a Bhangra dancer. We had a couple of stole drummers in the courtyard at the Lawrence Bartley Theatre. And I was dancing away, I was trying to invite people up, and Jess joined me and stuff. And, we were dancing. And I'd worked with Jess on a previous project. And on that project was basically, we were talking about migration stories. And I was actually, worked with another artist to reinterpret those artists in something called Bolia, which is like the female equivalent of Bhangra. So those songs. So taking oral histories and putting them into music. So that's important because that's some of that I've done with this Prince project as well. But yeah, so that actual point where I thought, what, this is the time I need to celebrate Prince is that time when I was dancing, and Jess came out and she's got a little Prince tattoo on her forearm, and I was like, what, I need to do more of this Bhangra Prince. I need to bring these two worlds together. And so so that was kind of the starting point of this idea and formulating and thinking, if I'm going to do something for Kirklees Era Music, yes, I could put on an exhibition, I can do something with Bhangra, but I want people to know that I'm more than just the kind of the Bhangra dancer, as a practicing artist, what else am I able to do and explore those ideas.
I watched the YouTube clip of the pre-show, I think, which is the one that Paddy went to with When Doves Cry, Nothing Compares to You, and Gold, which I thought was a really interesting choice of 3 songs as well, because Gold really isn't the obvious thing. But now I know that you're a kind of 90s fan, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And I love the way that it was kind of like not so much like a medley or just straightforward covers, that it was kind of like a journey from one song flowed into another, intercut with speeches from yourself. And I really picked out the opening one, and forgive me if I've misquoted this one, but it's that the Prince's music has been like armor that surrounds me. It's fed my spirituality, sexuality, and we find this a lot in his music, the duality of God and carnal pleasures of the world. When I heard that, that's absolutely how I feel. That's absolutely the very personal locked away. And maybe we did need to be a bit locked away to experience that. Yeah. But for you, how did that statement come about? How did you choose to open with that statement?
Well, interestingly, so part of the project was to kind of explore these ideas. So my friend actually interviewed me just for the pilot with a view to, I'm going to, well, I've already done some oral history. So actually I've interviewed, quite a few different people from, different backgrounds to kind of get their stories. And that was kind of the springboard to actually, do the actual, that creative process and stuff. Yeah. So I think, I don't know. I'm at a point in my life where, I'm open and honest enough to be able to say, look, Prince was such a massive part of my life. And I think especially since he's gone, since his passing, I think, it makes you feel like, you need to, sing and shout about his work even more. We need to amplify, his positivity and his love for music and kind of carry that effect forward, basically. Yeah.
What that really makes me think of is that kind of like, it was really lovely appreciating him kind of like in that time that was our own, like in the way that I think we all have. And I really appreciate that time, but I really like remembering him together.
Yes.
And there's something special about this journey that we, like a lot of Prince fans, went on by ourselves. And it's more than more than a lot of fan bases, I would say. Because I think if you were an Oasis fan, it was a very everybody together kind of experience, Spice Girls. And this is no shade or anything. It's all personal. It's all what it means to you. But I think there was a particular kind of in your own room, creating your own worlds with him. And I think it's really lovely, the idea of us kind of remembering this, experiencing alone, remembering together.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Exactly. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think because things like spirituality and sexuality are those things that are some things that you think in yourself, and then just kind of and just the way Prince played with those things, those dynamics and stuff was just incredible. But I think I didn't really think of, obviously, yes, sharing together. So once that's out recorded and out on a speaker and actually played out for everyone to actually think. And again, I think you sometimes just connect with those stories, and, like having the posters on the wall, people kind of connect with those narratives, because I think it's quite universal. But, you're right, Prince was very kind of special in that sense, that a lot of people were on that journey kind of through his music, maybe a little bit more isolated than other artists. That's interesting.
I've kind of very often wondered why it was, and like it's very easy. At first, I thought it was just because he had his time being the cool guy, but when I got into him, he wasn't quite the coolest thing there was. It was starting to get into that kind of weird, like, oh, he gets his ass out and he wears high heels, kind of, with kids in school. But the more I think about it, the more I think it wasn't just about that. It's about the sonic worlds he created and visual worlds he created, because he wasn't a singular. We think of him as a musician, but I think he was very much a multifaceted artist, that every aspect of him, now I come to talk to him, has been quite transgressive as an artist. And one of the things I can think of when you're putting this stuff together is Bangor always in 4/4 count, because a lot of Prince's stuff is in 4/4 count, and I wonder how you kind of match like that 1, 2, 3, 4 of like rock and pop is.
Okay. So that's interesting. So what I've tried to do with this project is, so we've had like a selection of songs, and I was thinking, maybe having it in some sort of kind of some overarching themes. So there's kind of two themes kind of running within it. So one is kind of the life journey, basically, starting off with like, obviously you maybe ruin the surprise, but yeah, starfish and coffee. I feel for you, going to, other kind of things that explore love and relationships. And then, going into, some of the kind of, the more things that deal with like, love, life, death, and then celebration of life and stuff. So I think those that kind of overarching narrative is there for people to understand the music, for the for the fans that really understand. For those that might not know his music so well, the other thing I wanted to do is actually have Prince's music through different types of cultural lenses. So it's not necessarily just Bhangra. So we've also got, steel pan artists. We've got this amazing Japanese harp player.
Can't wait.
So yeah.
One of the things we picked upon, Hardeep, when Chopin and myself were talking about it, and I'd suggested the interview and said, just listen to this. And Chopin sort of went in exactly the same direction as I went. It's almost like there is a seamlessness. The approach is like this amorphous cloud of sound and intent, and you sort of wandering along. And then with the example of the three that I've heard, obviously we've only heard the preview stuff so far.
Yeah.
The predominance of the identifier is the vocal melody when the vocal comes in.
Yeah.
But it's the beauty of the subtlety of how it just pivots from this amorphous, floaty sort of journey to, okay, now you've got a hook. But then the thing that I really like is you don't necessarily then go in the obvious direction after that. So it's perfect because you're not overly relying on the source material, and it's so you and it's so organic. And the other thing is that the idea of I cannot now you've suggested like sort of, I don't know, Japanese style instrumentation and steel drums. I'm absolutely just gagging for the 6th of August. But where you had that sort of the Bhangra vibe with the percussion, but it was just seamlessly leaning into a folk sound and then back again. And again, I'm sure I'm demonstrating a certain amount of ignorance because I'm not a specialist in either of those two musical forms. But to my ear, the seamlessness of it and the leaning of two things that don't necessarily have that much in common, it's absolutely wonderful using Prince as a pivot point. It's just like, it's inspired, really, to be honest. It's really, really good.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So yeah, I know obviously that, Prince experimented with lots of different musical genres, and I think there's like tablas deep in the mix within like Sign of the Times, on that record and stuff, I think. But it's just, let's let's try and push those kind of boundaries a little bit more. And yeah, it'd be kind of much more, and it'd be more representative of the community that, we're in. And, that was a big part of the kind of the Arts Council, bid in the project. So the oral histories is one, exploring those narratives, those stories. Second was, exploring the music and those musical genres, and bringing local and regional artists together, to try and explore those. And there's a Jen Pugh who's a musical director, Boff Whaley off Chumbawamba back in the 90s.
Yeah.
So he's doing the kind of the narrative and the storytelling and helping with the music as well. And then the third was obviously some of the imagery and stuff. So I think we were working with Casey Orr. She was the photographer. So Paddy, when you came into the space, we had these big posters, basically big photographic portraits of people of because it's interesting how your music then becomes part of your identity, as in, if you listen to loads like punk music or whatever, you emulate that in the kind of the dress you wear. And if sometimes it's more subtle, sometimes it's much more obvious and stuff. But I think that kind of identity and, the music and those explorations are done visually as well. So that was an interesting kind of angle to kind of add to it as well.
One of the things I wanted to ask you to expand on a little bit as well, what was the thought process when you put like musicians / a band together? Where do you start? Putting a tribute together, there's a lot of breadth. The extra sort of, the paradigm of extra layers you are putting in here because of other requirements that part of the whole art piece. I mean, it's massive. What was your starting point, and how did you develop it, that thought process for the band?
Okay, so the starting points, well, I think the first is the singers, basically. I mean, Maddie Morris, I worked with her on the Woven Festival, a couple of years back, and we were in the Minster over in Dewsbury. And when I was sat there and I was listening to her voice, it was just ethereal. And I thought, what, whatever I do, I need to get Maddie involved with this project. And again, she's telling me, because she's a lot of her songs talk about LGBTQ rights and empowerment and feminism and stuff. And she, when I was speaking to her, she didn't know. She knew of Prince because her dad used to play it all the time in the car, but she didn't know how much of an impact she had on that community. And it's something that she learned kind of when she started to talk to other friends that she was part of that project. So I think that the voice was kind of key. And then I had a friend who, he's a newish kind of friend. So he's moved up from London, Sunil Kalyan, who plays the tabla and the dholak. And he's been in the industry for about 30 odd years. He's toured around the world so many times with Bhangra bands. And I thought, there's another good starting point. So I don't know, Paddy, if you know, but on that evening, there was actually supposed to be another singer, a female Asian singer called Shubnam Khan. Now, unfortunately, she actually passed away. She actually, wasn't well for a while. And, and then on the day, she just says, look, I can't make it. And, she had cancer. And, so it's just kind of it was a moment over the last couple of months and stuff, just to, try and, see how else, we can actually use that energy in that direction, because it's such a massive part of the project. And, so then it was a view with like looking at other songs. So in particular, like Purple Rain, I wanted a gospel choir. And so we managed to find Rachel Modest, who was, I think she was a semi-finalist in The Voice, the TV show. And she's moving up to Wakefield. And, I said to her, look, it'd be wonderful to have you on board. And, she's one of our main singers as well now. So yeah.
Awesome. I was so sad. I remember at the time, I don't know if yourself or Jess mentioned it, what Maddie was kind of not the only singer but doing this session, but so sad to hear that's come to that conclusion. Yeah. Very sad. Yeah.
And Maddie, a true professional, she actually did the Punjabi spoken, the Hindi spoken parts, beautifully and stuff, but she just stepped in. So when Dove's Cry was going to be sung by Shubnam Khan, So yeah, so it's a journey. How we can empower local artists, those who are on the beginning of their journey, some who are a little bit further on. So our drummer Abby, you saw the drummer on stage. She's a first year student, and she's just a solid little drummer. She just she's just amazing. Vijay, who's a violinist, he was interesting to work with because when things were getting a little bit kind of not quite working, and I obviously I had these ideas in my head, but I'm not a musician as such, or I understand music, but I'm not a musician unless you talk to Susan Rogers but in her book she actually talks about most of I think it was most of the best musicians are, I think, who was it, I think it was a story about Prince. She's working with Prince, and who is it?
I think it was one of our. Was it one of the other? I know that. Yeah. I remember this story. It was one of the other engineers or one of the other producers.
He's a jazz musician.
Yes.
What's he called? Right, this is great. It's going to get me. But anyway, he comes downstairs to Prince, and he's talking to Susan Rogers, and he talks about some of the. She goes, "I'm not a musician." He goes, "Some of the best musicians I know aren't musicians." I understand what I want in my head, and there's certain ways of kind of delivering that, and Vijay was able to kind of bring that on board. So again, he doesn't read music like anyone else. He'll write it in a Carnatic style, like a different, obviously using his native language. And it's just interesting to see how different people work in different ways. And he was able to kind of pull some of those elements together through his experience. So that was another kind of interesting way of using musicians who've got that experience, so at the drop of a hat can actually adapt and, bring in some of their own artistry to give it that extra layer.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you're a dancer as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so is that because obviously you've got a feel and a physicality, when it's working, when it's making you move, and obviously there's the kind of the spiritual element of that as well. So is that a part of when you're listening to these rehearsals, if you're feeling it from that dancer place, is that?
I think so. Yeah. So I think as a dancer, I mean, this is the other thing as well. So like with my Bhangra dancing, I would dance, in front of like hundreds of people, when I'm doing workshops or going to schools, and when I'm dancing to Prince's music, it's usually when no one's around, I'm upset, something's happened in my life, or I'm just dancing, and that dance for me, dancing to Prince's music, no one will ever see. It's just proper, because I've got long hair. Proper kind of mosh out with my hair, and just really kind of free with it. But yeah, it's just interesting, yeah, how that element of dance, yeah, it's just for my own self-expression. And again, for the actual concert, for the actual show, we've actually got a dancer, Erica Mulkern. She's an amazing dancer. I think she did a master's here locally, and we've got her on board. We've also got an Irish dancer, and yeah, she's going to be part of the performance at some point.
Honestly, it just gets more interesting and just endlessly cosmopolitan. It's fantastic. I just wanted to add for people listening as well, if you go onto YouTube and search Prince Reimagined, you will find the preview clip. Please go and listen and hammer it, because it's extremely good. One of the other things I wanted to ask as well, again, don't tell us all the songs that are going to be in the show, obviously. I kind of don't know. It's nice to know a couple, actually, and I'm really looking forward to the ones you mentioned. How many songs are in the show?
So we've obviously got, I think there's 14 with some of the interludes as well. So we've kind of stepped it back. So, the interludes just break, not all the way through. So because obviously, the actual performance element has to work, the kind of ups and downs of the actual overall overarching performance. But it's going to kind of start off small and get bigger and bigger and bigger with more and more artists, yeah.
So you've mentioned there the dynamics. I love putting sets together, and the dynamics of the whole thing I find fascinating as a sort of a little bit of an arranger with, absolute gem after gem that I can lock together and make medleys of. But the whole idea of dynamics. So expanding on that a bit, you've got 14 songs and you had to be mindful of the dynamics to help tell the story and flow the way you wanted it to. Was there anything else particularly involved in song choice other than things like, I suppose, you're bound to have certain populist songs in as a latch-on point for people who are coming as a more casual listener to see what it's about. But what other things did you consider, and what was your sort of holistic thought process when you were putting it together, the songs?
Oh yeah, so yeah, there's so many kind of, do I go this way, do I go that way? I mean, my original list was like 30 songs,
I can imagine.
Congratulations, that's disciplined. 30 Prince songs, that's disciplined.
So yeah, I mean, I did. Then I thought, okay, I'd love to, dig out some kind of, ones that, like Empty Room, and just things that other people, and just my imagination. It's just all those kind of things that were just like, yeah, let's do this. But I think as a show I think those people that know Prince's music will enjoy it because of where we take it. Those people that might not know his music so well, like some of the younger audience that we're trying to kind of bring on board, it's kind of a gateway into some songs that they might have already heard. So when I was doing the interviews, I asked, the interviewees, their kind of top 10 favorite songs and stuff. And then, just kind of listening to, different people, like podcasts and different things, what are the kind of general top 10 songs that kind of come up. But yeah, so it was one of those, it's kind of looking at the hits, but then, yeah, because if you're taking it somewhere, people need to kind of be able to latch onto something that they kind of maybe already know. So yeah, I think that was kind of the way I was going into it. But yeah.
I have curious, and I know at the moment, the intention is to have the one-off sort of realized performance.
Yeah.
Is there a little bit of you that would want to take this on the road?
As much as I'd love to, I'm not sure how possible it would be, because it's taking so much
it's big
effort getting. So we've got our core musicians, then we've got our guest musicians coming in. So it's a lot of doodle polling and a lot of kind of getting people together.
The logistics of getting 3 musicians together in a room. I mean, if you've never been in any kind of band or anything, the logistics of just getting 3 musicians, a drummer, a bass player, and a guitarist in a room is extraordinary. So
yeah,
I'm doing it with 9, and you can see I've got no hair left, so it's kind of like that's the thing. But no, it was funny instinctually when I was speaking to Jess after we'd watched the preview. My instincts were all over, like, this guy's got to take this out. This has got to travel. But it's like I understand it isn't just a gig. It's a bigger experience with more threads, and it's Prince is the anchor point, but there are these other things sort of floating around. But
and the other thing, it's not kind of like a commercial venture either.
No.
Because it's Arts Council funded, it should be special. It should be like a one-off where people come far and wide, come and experience that thing. And I think that's kind of important. I mean, obviously there'll be a legacy through any recordings that take place, but yeah, I think that's really important.
I was going to ask, is there an intention to record the whole thing and then sort of upload it to YouTube so that anybody can experience this?
There needs to be some type of legacy from it.
Definitely.
Because there's so much effort, time, blood, sweat and tears that have gone into it so far. So yeah, I think.
Oh, I hope so. As somebody who's heard 3, I really hope.
Yeah.
People need to hear this. I think it's special. It's really special.
Was there any, like, because obviously, like, with us, I think something that we as like if you're like a hardcore, been following him for years and has got all the bootlegs and the B-sides and stuff, I think there's one thing that we kind of forget sometimes, and is the universality of the hits. And that the universal experience of just like, because we kind of go, oh, not Purple Rain again, or something like, like sometimes when we're just like, and I think it's like reimagining something as popular and as familiar as it is to somebody, to people that are like have heard the song 1,000 times. I think it's especially with the version of When Doves Cry that's on YouTube at the moment, is like there was something really nice about having, like, hearing the song again for the first time, because it's so not a straightforward cover. It's kind of an experiential kind of exploration of the song. Was there an intention of kind of having fresh ears on familiar emotions?
Yeah, I think, I get to as many kind of, Prince tribute acts, and, and I love it, and I party away. I'm on the dance floor right at the beginning, till the end and stuff. And I absolutely love, those experiences, because they are shared experiences. And again, which, I was attuned to, before. But I think it was just literally, I think I refer back to like when I went the gold experience, and, where I was like, you know what, this music I am hearing for the first time. So I wasn't listening to the hits or anything previously. I was just listening to this music for the first time. But how can I now, just think about how this would sound from a different cultural viewpoint, but then kind of be drawn in. And I think it's the music that really draws you in. And then if you find the right singer, I think, their vocals can transport you somewhere else, and, use those emotions. I think it's using that emotion behind the music, as the kind of driving force to those explorations, I think. So yeah, it's an interesting point, but that wasn't the forefront of my mind. I think it was more that, I'd like to hear this in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There was one thing that was really interesting going on when I was listening to. It's Maddie that was singing on that show there on the one on YouTube, and it was something really interesting where she would do a certain lilt, and it would be feel very like kind of English folk, and then there'd be another lilt, and it would be very Celtic, but then you should do another lilt, and it would be kind of a very like South Asian, and it's just like it's almost like it's the same song, but the intonations take you like, and especially if you're saying that there's Japanese instrumentation as well, it's like literally like taking the whole Silk Route in a song. Do you know what I mean? It's like this real interesting traveling that you do between very, very minor expressions on a very solid frame. And I think that's a very interesting way to explore our commonalities.
Yeah.
As well as our individual expressions through just very slight tonal kind of inflections.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I remember thinking about, Prince's like around the world. It's like, I was thinking that's the kind of the feel that I wanted. Obviously, our community has, South Asian community, Afro Caribbean community, and that's kind of fed into it. I mean, I was looking up and down the UK to find, a Japanese harp player. It's called a koto, so it's like this 13-string instrument, and just couldn't find anyone anywhere. And I think I'd almost given up. And lo and behold, I come across Sumi Kent, and she lives in Dewsbury, which is like, a 15, 20-minute drive. And she's 60 years old. But when I met her, she was like running to the coffee shop. She looked so fit and well. And I was like, I want to be you when I'm your age. And she was just such a talented artist, traditional folk, Japanese folk music. Like I'm a massive fan of like, Japanese culture and stuff. So that was something that I wanted to, kind of bring into it as well. So yeah, she's like, just a real treasure to find.
Weirdly enough, just as a side note, my husband's actually a koto harp player. Like he hasn't played for years,
Wow.
but he was because he learned when he was doing living in Japan for a while. So like he was for a while. I think he was. It's very rare to find one in the UK because for a while he was the only one listed on the Musicians Union in the UK.
Amazing,
but
isn't it? Wow.
It's just they're so big. Having one in the house is like so you end up not playing for years.
I think she's got a new one. She ordered one, and she had it on Facebook and stuff, and like just the beauty, the sheer beauty of the instrument itself, and I was like, wow, I just can't wait to hear it. So yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting. As I say, I can't plug it enough. Sunday, the 6th of August at the Lawrence Batley Theatre in Huddersfield. Look it up online and try and grab some tickets.
Absolutely. And if I can't make it up, I'd really love to be able to experience it somewhere. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, we've got like even like talking about the musicians. We've got Carol Hodge. I think she's on to her was it fourth studio album. She's on the keyboard. We've got James Franklin. I think he's on his second album. He's from Bolton. Beautiful kind of guitarist. And I chose him because of the emotion you get from his music and stuff. So it's not technically, I don't know if he's an amazing guitarist, but obviously he is, because obviously he's on his second album and he's doing really well. But it's just how his guitar playing and the emotion behind it are just kind of connected. Yeah, so some really kind of talented musicians on board with it, and I think that helps loads. I think that where they can really step in and take it to those places. So obviously we've got rough demos. When they start doing the rehearsals, that's when obviously the magic's gonna really kind of come together, I think.
Was there one song that you kind of wanted to put in there, but like it was too obscure or anything? Like you just thought, I can't do that one, but the one that hasn't made the cut that kind of like was just like, I'd love to hear that like that, but like I know it doesn't fit in the project.
Which song was number 15?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've already mentioned it, like Empty Room, but just I mean, there's other kind of ones that I really like that didn't make the cut, like Thieves in the Temple. Seven's like mine and my wife's kind of favorite song, and yeah, that didn't make the cut. But yeah, because it was literally like, okay, well, we need to know those that people are aware of, and use those as a kind of a point of entry, basically.
See, now I'm imagining that Empty Room played with the koto harps and
endless possibilities.
You'll have to do a second show.
The song is actually going into is Sometimes It Snows in April, and what I'll do, I might actually put out a little short clip of the demo of what they've done so far. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh, we all, the Prince fans, like a teaser. It's all good.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for talking to us. Again, listeners, I just, and I'm picky as hell about interpretations of Prince stuff, and I'm very, very precious about each and every individual song. Not the politics, not what he did, the music. I'm very picky, and I absolutely love the three I've heard so far and just can't wait to hear the rest. Again, one more time, the Lawrence Batley Theatre in Huddersfield, August, Sunday the 6th. You've got to go along. Search on YouTube for Prince Reimagined for the clip of the 3 songs from the preview show, which was very, very lucky to attend. Please go and see what you think, and please go and see the show. I suppose to close out, is there any... He's got his hand up, you see, because we can all see each other. I was going to say, is there anything else that you want to add, tell people, throw in there, then fire away?
Yeah, so obviously on YouTube, it's like a small pilot, with a very modest budget, and in the Cellar Theatre. So this performance will actually take place in the main house. So obviously we've got all those, amazing professional artists, singers, musicians, guest musicians coming in. We've got dancers and obviously some visuals to really kind of make it, a real experience that, there'll be something to remember, definitely.
Chopin, you've got to come up for this, mate.
I'm looking at the trains. Please don't let there be engineering works that weekend. So for people interested in this project and want to find out more about yourself, whereabouts would they be looking?
Yeah, so search, anywhere like Hardeep Sahota, Bhangra dancer in the UK. But if you head to the Lawrence Batley Theatre website, you have information about the Prince Reimagined project, as well as myself being I'm also a cultural ambassador, helping them diversify those theatre audiences as well. It's important for people from all parts of the community to be able to kind of take part in those theatre spaces and spaces like the university here as well. So, just to, that's an important kind of role as well for me as well. Is take the music out to different communities, but then bring those communities in and experience something that you might not necessarily have found otherwise.
Fantastic. No, fantastic. It's the quintessential singular language. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And it's beautiful. Like I'm loving all of the different ways that this the legacy is kind of now being living on in very. I think initially everybody was just like kind of, we're going to listen to the music, and we're getting to the point where it's influenced by, and you know, and it's lovely to see. It's lovely to see.
Thank you very much.
So on behalf of the PPUK podcast, Hardeep, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for sharing your time and energy, and thank you for working on something that I think is going to be beautiful to see and for us to consider going forward. To everybody listening, thank you so much for listening to us. Paddy,
good night.
Good night, and good night from me, Chopin.